Welcome everyone to How to Grow a B2B Software Review Program. Today we've got some amazing speakers joining us to talk about growing successful review programs. I'm going to hand it off to our moderator, Jen, who is our fabulous Trust Radius VP of Customer Success. Hi, Jen.
Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're watching us from. So I am super excited to moderate today's webinar. We've got some great panelists. Joining me today, we've got Lauren Harris. She's the Director of Community Programs at Oracle. She's got 20 years of experience working the full gamut from startups up to the Fortune 100 organizations. We also have Andrew Sevilla. And he is the Director of Customer Marketing over at NICE InContact. And with 12 plus years of customer marketing, Andrew actually leads all the customer marketing and advocacy efforts within Sage. So he's super busy these days. And then we also have Omer Siddiqui. He's the Demand Generation Manager over at NICE and InContact. And as a demand gen and digital marketing expert, he's got a track record of building out successful marketing programs at Fortune 500 companies. So our goal today was to kind of get a good breadth of folks from all different types of organizations. Super excited to have you guys all join us today. All right, so we are going to, let me see if I can share my screen real quick. Awesome, so one of the things we wanted to kind of dive into before we kind of get going, and we're going to keep this very, very light on slideware, but just to set the stage of why we're here, right, is the fact that for so many of our buyers, they're really choosing their own journey and it's online, right? So Forrester earlier this year put out some stats that 67% of the buyer's journey is completed digitally. That was before COVID, right? So now I think we are definitely closer to that 100% mark of folks going online to kind of do this, their buying journey. And typically by the time they actually get to the vendor and they're actually engaging, they're over halfway done with their decision, right? They've done their research, they've gotten to the short list, et cetera. They're already very well educated by the time they even get to a sales rep. And then one of my favorite stats there is there on the right, and this is earlier from some research we did, where it's interesting when you think about buying software, it's normally not one person making that decision, right? There is an entire buying committee that is there, and most of them, almost half of them, will never talk to a sales rep. They're behind the scenes, but they're still doing all of that work that is super important. So this is kind of the reason for why reviews are important as we kind of click through. And so one of the things that's always important is, where should you be investing to kind of go and get reach these buyers? Demos are always going to be the most important. They're the favorites, right? And so you need to have a really rockin' demo to engage folks. And of course, the website has to be spot on, has to be clear about what you sell and do. But the third big piece there is user reviews. People want to find from users just like them. In fact, it's more important even than your vendor rep. It's more important than those free trials that everyone gives away. It's more important than even referrals, right? And so this is where, for Trust Radius, and of course we're biased, but that this is why it's important for teams to invest in reviews. Buyers are going to go here, whether you want them or not. So how do you really invest and make sure that you've got a great presence? And this is one kind of pillar in your program. So we will, I'm going to stop sharing now so that we can, since nobody likes a ton of slides, and we will dive right into some of our questions. So I wanted to start really broadly and just ask our guests today, how are you currently using reviews in your organization today?
Yep, I'll go first. Thanks, Jen. So at Oracle, the way that we view the customer review program is really part of our broader engagement initiatives. So we look at it as a way to provide raw customer input and feedback directly to other customers to help them realize value. So to me, it's really important that we not only enable, but we encourage our customers to read reviews, leave reviews, of course, and I look at it as a significant step in their own peer engagement, which I think increases their value with us and the way that they participate with us, as well as their likelihood of hopefully quickly achieving success. I think that you had up some research on your slides, and I have used the Trust Radius research so many times. I almost feel like I'm one of you guys sometimes, but I really think that for any organization that wants to be customer focused, which who doesn't, to me, the peer review program, the customer review program is integral to that. And it has to be part of it, because the fact is, this is just simply what they want. We don't find that B2B buyers, I mean, as you guys know, they do not want to see all of our marketing slicked up materials. They're not interested in it. I mean, maybe eventually, but not up front. And so we really do need access to that raw customer voice, what it is that they really think. So I think that for us, we view this as a way to as a piece of our overall customer engagement, but ultimately helping our customers to achieve value and get the success that they are looking for through talking to their peers and hearing from them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and go ahead, Andrew.
I was just gonna add. I mean, Lauren, you eloquently described the value that these reviews bring. Like Lauren, I've used the Trust Radius research to help kind of make a strong argument for why our company really needs to focus on customer reviews. So the way that we use customer reviews at Sage Intacct, though, is we look at it as sort of one piece of a larger puzzle. And that puzzle is all about trying to understand the customer's experience, their satisfaction level, both positive and negative. So, obviously we want to engage with happy customers that are having a good experience, so that we can, include them in our advocacy program and have them be a part, have their voice be heard, across the business. But the other piece of it is, we also want to understand which customers are maybe not having such a great experience, right? And the online reviews is a great place to sort of source or identify customers that might need, additional support, might need some training, might not understand how to get the full value out of the investment that they've made. So, I think about reviews as I want to see both the positive and the negative. The positive, obviously, we can leverage those voices across case studies and video testimonials and all sorts of other things. But we can also package up those reviews into ebooks, gathering the quotes for syndication across our website. And again, the not so happy customers, I want to change their experience. So if I don't know that a customer is having a less than stellar experience, there's really nothing I can do about it, right? So, mining the reviews from Trust Radius gives me an opportunity to have a conversation with a customer, to put a customer in front of their account rep, and hopefully to change their experience around. And so, again, we sort of look at reviews as one signal that we're receiving from customers, along with obviously NPS and a few other signals that we're receiving. And so as we receive these signals, it gives us an opportunity to act on them. And I think that's really critical when you think about reviews.
Yeah, and we look at reviews slightly differently. We look at reviews from a demand generation perspective. So, one of the ways we leverage reviews and drive reviews is really to boost our SEO rankings. We know that Google's algorithms and even Bing's algorithms place a considerable amount of weight on reviews, and it's difficult to quantify what the weight is, because I think it changes quite a bit. So we certainly know that the algorithm is taking that into account, and the sort of other benefit of that is, the more you're driving reviews to different review sites, the more avenues your prospects have to research you. The other way, I think, analyst reports rank us, pretty highly as a leader in our industry, in our category. But the review sites, what they do is provide sort of the other side of the spectrum, where customers are able to validate or show how they're using our product on an everyday basis, and that builds use cases within Trust Radius. And prospects can go in and understand how we can help them optimize their contact center better, just by looking at the way one of our customers is using our software within their contact center on a daily basis. And both of those, I think, contribute to the function of pipeline generation. And as Andrew mentioned, we syndicate these reviews across a website. We syndicate these reviews, to create ebooks and other collateral that again aids in the pipeline generation function.
That's awesome. And yeah, and so it sounds like, across the board, it's not just a one thing, right? There's not one thing that reviews do for you. It can help with the pipeline. It can help you with your marketing material. It can help you get that insights to make your product better and better and better, if you're using it correctly, right? Which you guys are all doing stellar jobs. We've got some folks on the line I know that are interested in building a new program or can maybe kind of fleshing out one they have today. So as they're kind of going through this journey, what are kind of the top 3 tips you'd give for building and growing a review program? And then I'll also call out that we do have, for the folks listening, the Q&A button there at the bottom. So if questions pop in your head as we're going, throw those in there and we will try to address those as well. But Lauren, you want to start off with giving us a couple of your tips?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jen. So the first thing I would say is definitely discovery. When we got started with this at Oracle, there wasn't, I don't feel like there was a lot of talk about it. I mean, maybe we just didn't realize, but I would say that it took us a good year of kind of failing, restarting, having a couple of successes to really figure out the sheer breadth of value that you can get from the customer reviews program. And really, it's exactly what Andrew and Omer just talked about. The output from reviews is so extensive that if you're kind of muddling through it tactic by tactic, well, for one thing, you're just unlikely to ever really understand it at a holistic level, but you'll also be just kind of disjointed. So I think that with the information that's available, and obviously there's lots of folks now that have done this, the people who are starting today have a really great opportunity to jump into this and understand it at a very wide breadth and to figure out where they want to focus. Because it is very large. Of all the initiatives that I've ever worked on, this is one of, in fact, I would say the only initiative I've worked on that has the ability to feed so many different funnels, whether it's a content funnel, a demand gen funnel, the intent data side, whatever it is. We talked about traffic that Omer mentioned. So there's just opportunity across the board. Then I would follow that with, don't get overwhelmed. So once you've gone through all that discovery, that does not necessarily mean that you need to go do it all. I think that it's really important, especially in this is a change management exercise. That's really what we're talking about. It's a culture shift for any organization to take these things on if you're doing it at any kind of scale. And I think focus is a big piece of this, especially if you're kind of trying to get a few wins under your belt and then attempt to use those to kind of promote or advertise internally. So I think that it's really good to have an understanding of what's possible, but then really focus on where you're most likely to make the biggest impact, what aligns the most to your initiatives. And then after that, I would say, once you've kind of figured out, you understand the possibilities, you've narrowed, I would think about scale. And I don't think it matters what size company you're in. I really recommend people to try to get out of the manual pieces of this. I just don't think it's sustainable. And I also don't think that it allows you to achieve the full breadth of value if you do it that way. I think you can cover more. I think that was at least 3. I'm pretty sure, so I'll stop.
That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely 3 in there, Lauren. Probably more like 5 or 7. Great stuff, Lauren. Yeah. So, if thinking about building and growing a reviews program, I think, like Lauren, I could probably come up with, 7 different sort of strategies amongst Omer, myself, and Lauren. We could probably come up with 10 or 15 different strategies for thinking about how do you get started. And I think, the first things first is like claim your profile. Update your company's profile page on TrustRadius. Start thinking about where, how do you want to get started, right? So you can run email review campaigns, you can hit your NPS list, but what we found is actually, if we put the ask in places where our customers are already, at, like for instance, if you've got an advocacy hub, or if you've got an online community, or if you're doing meetups, or, your big annual customer conference, if you're if you're putting the ask in front of them in places where they already are, as opposed to trying to bring them to you, you're going to have a lot more success. So think about, where are your customers? Well, I know that my customers, because we're a SaaS software application, they have to log in through the internet, right? So they come to our website. There's a login page. So what we've done is we put the review CTA on the login page, and that's had tremendous results, as opposed to, again, pulling a list of high NPS, running an email review campaign to that list. Because there's so much email that I don't read, right? There's so much that gets deleted, just because I know it's either an advertisement or something like that. So, find the places where your customers are and meet them there. Don't just focus on the good, right? Like I said earlier, if you're solely focused on 5-star reviews and positive reviews, I guarantee you that your prospects aren't going to take your reviews as seriously if there's not some less than stellar reviews in there. So don't be afraid, right, to reach out to customers or put the opportunity in front of customers that you're not 100% sure are going to write, a positive stellar review about their experience. And again, it gives you an opportunity to have a conversation with a customer about their experience and make sure that you put them in front of the right team or the right people to get them, to change their experience, right? And then, another big thing is partner with your business. Find folks across your marketing team, your sales team, your support team, to help you get this ask in front of customers. We recently launched an initiative with our support team whereby when a customer submits a support ticket and that support ticket gets worked and ultimately gets closed, an email gets generated and sent out to the customer, asking them for feedback on their experience with our support team. So we also use that as an opportunity to put the review ask in front of customers. So your website, your meetups, your advocacy portal, all those places are just sort of always on as well, which is nice because if you're constantly, like Lauren said, thinking tactically about how do I carve time out of my day to do another list pull or get do something tactical, it's just not a good use of your time. So find opportunities to sort of automate this thing, find out where your customers are, and partner with your business.
Yeah. And I'll add on to what Andrew just said about the negative reviews. I love this one because I dealt with it for so long. It has become my own little, I don't know, I guess a win, if you will, because I definitely felt that it was hard internally to convince people that a negative review was okay. And going back to trust radius research, I used your research and got all kinds of data points on the basically customers, in fact, don't just want it. What they do is their behavior as they go in, and if they don't see a negative review, they keep looking. And if they don't find a negative review on Trust Radius, they'll go to other review sites and look there. Like they will eventually find it. And if they don't, then they assume that you're kind of spammy and they just move on. So that message has finally come through. And I'm glad to say that I'm no longer dealing with that one, but I think that it is very common. And I totally echo what Andrew just said. There's no need to be scared of it. And as a matter of fact, I would say you have to have them. Otherwise you don't look credible. So.
Yeah, I think anyone who goes to a site and you see 100 5-star reviews, right?
Yeah.
It just rings inauthentic, right? 100% agree. Omer, did you have any tips that you wanted to kind of share with us as well?
Yeah, I think, like Andrew said, make sure that you're asking for reviews where your customer activity is highest. That's really important. And always find the right customers to ask because, there's customers that use your product on a daily basis, that use your services on a daily basis, and there are those that don't really, and they're involved, they're at a higher level, but they don't really know the ins and outs. And the customers that really use your services, they are the ones who can really give you the best insights and the quality insights that you really need. And so try and reach out to them. both Andrew and Lauren are on the customer marketing side of things. And I think, no matter where you're starting your review program, whether it's from a pipeline generation perspective or a customer marketing perspective, I think it's really important to have everyone's buy-in and involvement and agreement that this is important, that this matters, and that the positives far outweigh the negatives.
Yep, absolutely. And this is very exciting. We've got a few questions that have come in through our question Q&A box, so we're going to take a couple of those. So we've got one that asks, with the large number of review sites that are out there, how do you guys choose which ones to focus on? I have a very biased answer, but would love to hear from you guys on how you look at that.
Lauren, you want to go first?
Yeah, I've got this.
Ahead.
So this has been a big question for us, and took about, I would say, a good year of kind of processing around with this one. I will tell you tactically, towards the end of what I'm about to describe, I actually did a table. And I mean, this is very specific to Oracle. So I think everybody's going to have their own version of what I'm about to describe. But I basically put down the things that we cared about, stuck the vendors at the top, and I rated them yellow, red, and green. And that visual was really, it was just great. It honestly gave it some, I don't know, I feel like I wasn't saying anything different than I'd already been saying, but it was almost like having that image and having it so just laid out in front of you gave it validity. So the way that we ended up pulling together this data we were looking at things like the number of our customers that were on each site, the page views that we were getting, the time spent on each site, and I'm sure there were a couple others, but basically I had, 4 or 5 kind of data things. And then we looked at other things. I mean, of course, you've got Gartner that influences the Magic Quadrant, things like that just is, that you have to care about. So each one of those we kind of weighed, and that gave me a focus area to be able to say, okay, well, if this is what we care about the most, then this is the vendor that we go with. If we care most about this, maybe it's a little bit of a mix. But I think that way of thinking about it was very helpful to just kind of decide what's important and almost just build a little matrix, because the data is there. And if it's not there, I'm sure you guys can help people get it.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Absolutely.
We did something very similar to that, Lauren. And I think we looked at some different factors. We looked at where our competitors are, where they're driving reviews. I think that's important. We looked at the amount of traffic that each review site is getting. And I think most important, where there's quality content, the kind of reviews and the quality of reviews that you get at Trust Radius is very hard to find on some of the other sites, just because, you're able to ask custom questions, which is not something you can do. You get a lot more detail in the responses, so that's important. And finally, I think, because I'm a demand generation lead, I need to look at where, what tools each site is offering in sales enablement and pipeline generation. So those are some of the factors that we looked at.
Real quick, I just want to say, it's not an all or nothing kind of thing. So we spread the love across the various sites throughout every quarter. We change up where the CTA is. So, for instance, for a month, we might really focus Trust Radius within our advocacy hub and another online review site on, let's say, the login page. And then, a month later, we might switch it, right? So I think there's, it's not all your time and energy focused on one site at a time. I think there's, like I said earlier, there's ways to sort of automate and have always on sort of opportunities for your customers to write reviews. The other thing is, I think there's times of the year where we're focusing more on, I'm just going to say Gartner Pure Insights, right? Because Magic Quadrant season is coming, or there's another review site where we might really want to, focus on a specific category so that we can do well in their reports. So, it's a combination of factors, but I don't think it's an all or nothing, sort of proposition.
Completely agree.
Yeah, and I'll say across the board from our customers, right, we see the mix, right? We see some that are they were like, I want to pick one, it's Trust Radius, and I'm going to put all my eggs in it. We see others that say, we've got to kind of spread it around a little bit, right? And so either strategy can absolutely work for you. One of the things we always encourage, kind of to Lauren's point about the data, right, is it's out there. You should be asking all the vendors for it. And when it comes to things like traffic, ask them about the traffic you care about, right? If you have a whole bunch of traffic for categories that don't matter to you, who cares? So get specific and say, hey, for my category, what does the traffic look like? What do the time on page looks like? And then you can get more of an apples to apples kind of comparison.
And make sure it doesn't include their blog.
Yes.
No blog.
Yeah. So make sure it's like the real content that is out there is
Yeah.
what we want to see. That's awesome. Okay, so we have another community source question from you guys, so keep those Q&A questions coming. And this one is about kind of the biggest challenges that they've had is gathering reviews, is actually getting that customer to take the time to complete a review. They've done email and calling campaigns where they've identified customers who are willing to write the review, but then they just don't, for whatever reason, right? They forgot or they didn't have time. So how do you kind of work to kind of get a decent conversion rate and get those reviews flowing in?
Somebody else, one of you guys go first on this one.
Yeah. I mean, been doing this for a long time, like Omer and Lauren. What I've found is that the email campaigns just don't convert, I don't know. Yeah, again, convert new reviews as well as some of the other ways to do it. If you have a big customer conference, maybe it's once a year, we have one, typically in October, we've got a customer booth and, it's right on the show floor. So we've got traffic flowing through and, it's not hard to grab somebody and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Here's a $25 gift card. You'll receive a $25 Amazon gift card if you write this review. Now, those reviews aren't, because they're on the show floor and people are maybe going from session to session or whatever it might be, they're not going to be as, as thorough, right? But if you can maybe print, what we did once was we printed a postcard. And on the postcard, it had the link, and the link obviously was attached to a campaign and it was incentivized. So just handing out the postcard, right there. Again, having the ask in your advocacy hub, if you have one, on your community site, even in like LinkedIn groups, right? I mean, there's so many places where your customers already are, and it's just a matter of finding those places and putting that ask in those specific locations, as opposed to, again, trying to bring people to you via email campaigns. So my 2 cents on that. Yeah.
So this is an interesting one for us, and why I didn't want to go first. So pre-COVID, we had a ton of success at events, similar to what Andrew just said. We had a booth, we did the postcards. Gosh, we did so much stuff. I don't even know. I feel like we were always trying something new. We did it for several years, then COVID hit. And we didn't have any events, and it is a struggle. It really is. We have been trying to do what I call always on campaigns, which is kind of similar to what Andrew was talking about, but not exactly. I mean, similar, but I think what he was describing is a kind of a slight next step to it. We're plugging into things that are already on, so that if a customer is going into a portal or whatever it might be, over to the right-hand side, they might see a little link. But I will tell you, we're not seeing a huge amount of success from it. And I think it takes a bit more of a personal approach, or at least a louder approach, if you will. Like, these are very light touches. So that's something that we're actually working on right now, is what I hope we end up with is, with those integrations, how we can evolve those into a more personalized approach. So for example, virtual events, rather than just having a link at the end saying, hey, leave a review, maybe it's on the slide that says, while you wait, go leave a review, those types of things, just a little bit more present. And then another one that, and we're really at the beginning stages of this, but I'm hoping we can do it relatively quickly, is tie into customer milestones. So as they reach milestones, have it be an automated process for whether that's the CSM or sales, I don't know, to reach out and ask for a review. So I think that COVID has definitely made it more challenging, for sure, and I don't have the answer to it. So that's just some things that we're looking at.
Yeah, and I'll say, we work with customers every day on this, right? Like, it's kind of the number one thing we're focusing on, and it is kind of across the gamut, right? Events, we loved them; they were great to get reviews in, and so this year has definitely been a struggle, and we need to get a little more creative, right? I do think to your point about finding like, where are those natural spots, right? If you're already doing an NPS survey, make that the follow-up. Cool, you just gave us an NPS, here's the next step for it. We've just started piloting ourselves, to your point, Lauren, about the milestones, right? When a customer renews, we kick over an NPS. As soon as they say yes or no, then we go and send that. And of course, we try to drink our own champagne. So we will ask for a review. Even if you give us a 1 on an NPS, we still follow it up for a review. So there's lots of things you can do to kind of get in that flow. Email's hard, right? So we all get it. We all get so many emails. You tend to tune it out. So if you can do it in product and newsletters and webinars, right? And kind of just put them, and it might be, it's the 3rd time a person has seen the prompt, and that's the thing that finally triggers them, to go and do it. And of course, we always see that incented ones do tend to work better, right? If you can give someone a $25 Amazon gift card, they tend to fill those out a little bit better, a little more often. Awesome. So we got another question in here. This one was aimed at you, Lauren, for how did you get sales and other stakeholders in your organization to align and partner with you on the reviews initiative? We know sales folks are hard to convince.
The internal buy-in piece of this was definitely a challenge, and it took quite a while. I think it actually goes back to, I think it was the first or maybe second question. Or actually, I would say I think we have a question coming up about challenges. In my opinion, I think we went a little bit too broad. So we tried to focus on too much at once. And I think that made it a little bit challenging for us to really get some good, solid successes. And I think that to get buy-in, you have to have those good, solid successes. So, but back to the actual intent of the question, I would say, honestly, I put on my internal sales hat for about a year and a half. I lived in data and slides, going around and selling this. I was taking things like what we were talking about earlier, the traffic to the sites, how much time people were spending on these things. And I was putting it in front of people to really convince them that this is something that's important, and not just Oracle data, but also just generic buyer data, things that showed that customers, B2B buyers, are looking at this information. They're going to these sites and they're actually bypassing our sales reps because of a trust issue. So it was quite an endeavor. And it was really, I had multiple people on my team as well as my management. Everybody was kind of going around and pitching the story. So I'd love to hear from Andrew and Amir if you have any other suggestions for it. But from my experiences, I think if I could go back, I would focus a little bit more. I would try to really dig in deeply with 1 or 2 areas so that we can get some really good wins. But I still think that internal sales component, it doesn't go away. It just probably gets a little easier. So.
Yeah, I mean, so what I did when I joined Sage Intact was I put together, my deck of slides and sort of outlined all the areas that I wanted to focus on, and obviously online reviews was a large component of that. And I did kind of an internal roadshow, right? Went around to all the leaders of the different organizations and said, hey, here's what I'm going to bring. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I need from you, right? And so, just kind of making them aware of like how powerful these things are, right? Not only from a lead gen perspective, but, from a customer sat perspective. And that obviously resonates, those messages resonate differently with different leaders across the company, right? Like the head of the customer success team is focused obviously on customer sat and opportunities to deflect churn and, opportunities to identify for upsell and that sort of thing. So, coming to the team and putting information in front of them around what I'm going to deliver for them and how that's going to impact them, I think that was kind of critical right off the bat. The other thing is we're making a big investment in the online review sites, right? And obviously we want to get the most, return on that investment. It's not a one-person thing. There's a lot of people who, play a role in terms of making our investment successful. So, I think that was also critical, was saying, hey, we're spending a lot of money on this. we really need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure it's successful. I think the other thing from a sales buy-in perspective was, setting up a campaign around leads that come in through review sites and tracking those really closely and making sure that your sales leadership understands that these leads and this intent data is coming from these online review sites. And tracking that and then trying to, as those leads make their way through the funnel, hopefully, become closed won, attaching a dollar amount to that and trying to calculate, how beneficial these review sites are from a new business perspective. So I think, those are a couple of things that sort of helped me to get that buy-in. And, one last thing is, if the company you're working for doesn't recognize the value of a voice of the customer program, you might not be working at the right company. I mean, I think, nowadays it's critical that every company has somebody like, Lauren and Omer and myself who are thinking every day about how do we increase our advocacy program and get more online reviews and do all the things that we do every day to kind of think about how can we impact, the future of the business. So yeah, I don't know, Omar, did you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well, Andrew. And I did something really similar. I went to all of our stakeholders. I did a webinar on this, and I really went to them with a what's in it for me approach. And I think sales for us really wasn't that involved. It was really the customer team. And that's what you need to do. I think, if you can really go out there and get the teams to set their own goals with regards to review sites, that's probably, the best thing that can happen. But really, it's really just about getting their buy-in, and I think you covered it well.
Yep. Awesome. And looking through the questions here, we've got one from Victor that's actually pretty similar to one we had queued up, which is good. It means we're on the right track here. And it's really, talk a little bit about how you got this process going internally. And we hear all the time there's barriers, right, to getting programs like this going. So if you think about it from your perspective as you look back, what's kind of been the biggest barrier, either internally or externally, that you've seen to kind of building out your review program? Andrew, you want to start with this one?
Sure. I mean, I think, we for so long now, the people in the advocacy marketing, customer marketing, what used to be just called reference marketing, we were so desperate for approval. We sort of we didn't know where we fit and all that. And now I think it's so obvious, and every company, like I said earlier, needs to have one of these programs. So I really don't think you need to wait for anybody's permission to kind of get started with these online review or whatever, kicking off your advocacy program, right? So, I think if you're waiting for permission, don't, right? Just get started. You don't need anybody's permission. I mean, if you can show results, right? And what are results? New reviews, leveraging the voice of the customer from reviews to, further your other customer content, initiatives around, case studies, video testimonials, blog posts, webinar speakers, analyst relations, advocates, that sort of thing. So, if you can show results, then, the permission or the approval is going to come, right? What I love nowadays is when someone from my demand gen team comes to me and says, hey, Andrew, we're doing a webinar next month. We'd like 3, software customers in New York that are using our contracts module and switched from ABC competitor. And I can turn that around so quickly as a result of, having a robust online reviews campaign where I've taken those reviews to the next step and actually, brought those customers into our greater advocacy program. So I think, kind of making magic happen on the back end and making it seem seamless is really going to impress your marketing leadership, your sales leadership, and it's just going to further your voice of the customer program.
Awesome. Any other thoughts on that one?
I think we've kind of covered mine, but I would say that the biggest challenge, honestly, we're facing right now really probably is the review recruitment one, which we already talked about. Now, in terms of getting started, I think that it goes back to the complexity that there's just so much you can do with this. And so the way we structure this is I sit in a corporate function. So I'm in corporate marketing, and we try to build the processes and integrations and platforms that we need to get the various kind of funnels of value. So that means that my team sort of sits in the middle, and we are working with the content people, with the sales guys, with demand gen, with all these different teams that could be impacted, which is fantastic. But if you're just starting out, it can be a bit overwhelming and complex to orchestrate.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Well, let's shift gears slightly, and we'll start with you on this one, Omer. Hopefully you can still hear us there. Everyone's favorite 3 letters, ROI. So let's talk a little bit about when you look at reviews programs, right? What are you looking at? What types of metrics? How are you measuring that? Are you looking for a hard ROI, a soft ROI? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think you can look at it from a few different perspectives, and we're really not talking about intent data, but I think for us, it's, that's where we see ROI is, we're able to look at the intent data. We're able to look at all of our prospects that are going into Trust Radius, looking at our page, looking at our reviews, comparing us to other competitors, and then becoming an opportunity in our system. So obviously the buyer's journey is not linear. They're going back and forth from review site to review site. They're looking at analyst reports. And that's why it's so important to keep driving reviews, is to give them more content to consider. But yeah, going back to my main point, we've looked at intent data and compared it to the opportunities that are open in our system, and we're able to find thousands and in some cases millions of dollars of pipeline influenced by a review site. So we know that the decision makers, the stakeholders are going in and they're looking at it. So it's really about having influence at each touch point, at each stage of the journey. And if you can do that more often than not, you're going to convert that customer. So for us, that's really the ROI. I think, in some ways it is softer ROI than you can't really measure the complete impact, but you can measure the influence that review sites are having.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think just like as an aside here, since we spent a lot of time talking about reviews and collecting the content and the feedback and using the feedback, which is great. But the other byproduct of when you have a really robust presence on these review sites, it now means you get good data, right? People are coming to the site. We know who's looking at you. And now we can surface this to you, right? So that's what, Amira is talking about, is you can actually look and see, yep, this person is in there, and it's a $20,000 deal for me, and does it close faster than those who don't look at review sites, right? So you can play with some of this data if you kind of got that presence up on those sites. Andrew, Lauren, what about you guys? What do you look at for ROI?
So same as Omer, as for the deals touched, we're definitely looking at that. We also look at how we are supporting our corporate initiatives. So for example, reference leads that come from the reviews, feeding content. So, kind of the content machine within Oracle that then sales and marketing pulls from. So that's an important one. We have specific sales plays that we are looking for quotes to align to. So that's another one. And then traffic to our corporate site. Going back to Omer, I think you were talking about the SEO and that piece, and we're definitely looking at how we are supporting that initiative or that KPI.
Yep. Yeah, and I like that you mentioned the references, right? I think it's I know I've talked to lots of customers who they have these goals, right? We want this many advocates and hand raisers, and we need this many case studies, and they're hard to go and get. And so you can have with Trust Radius, when we solicit a review, part of the questions is, would you be willing to serve as a reference for Oracle or for Sage Intacct, right? And so they can actually then opt in, and that's a very hot lead. This is someone who not only do they like you, they are willing to be a reference, right? And so you can take those and cultivate them and kind of build that pipeline up a bit. Andrew, what about you guys? You don't care at all about ROI, right?
Yeah. You know, I mean, I could just, yeah. I could reiterate a lot of the things that Omer and Lauren said, but, you know, I don't, everything they said is exactly right. I mean, you know, whether it's net new leads or attribution, whether it's, you know, new content created. I mean, one thing that I mean, this is maybe a little soft and fuzzy, but let's say, you know, I cultivate a marketing reference through an online review, and ultimately I get that reference to speak on a webinar. You know, all the attendees to that webinar, net new, I'd like to think that they are as a result of, you know, my online reviews program. I cultivated that reference through an online review. They ended up speaking on a webinar. You know, we got, you know, 100 new leads out of that webinar. I mean, there's some correlation there, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and I think we always see a mix of reviews programs in general. It's not as black and white as some of your software out there, right? But it's certainly, it's possible, right? To kind of go in and kind of figure out that ROI and what matters the most to your business and then measure it, right? And we preach that a lot, right? Measure, try it out different ways and see kind of what works. Is always a little different for different organizations. Okay, cool. So here's a question that came in from our group, which is when you are looking to go drive those reviews, do you just ask the decision makers, or are you asking like multiple people at a time within the same organization? What's your kind of strategy for approaching that?
I want reviews from anybody who's in the product. You know, to be honest with you, the decision makers that are buying Sage Intacct software, typically CFOs, people at the highest level, and they might be in the product occasionally running reports, that sort of thing. But I really want the people that are in it every day, you know, the controllers, the VPs of accounting, finance, that sort of thing. So, you know, I don't discriminate, believe me. I'll take any and all. But really, I need people who are in the product.
Yeah,
Same
here. We ask everybody.
Yeah, and for us, it's, you know, the best insights come from contact center agents who are our users. We do ask everybody. You know, I think as soon as we open our reviews platform, our reviews outreach to agents, that's when we got the most quality feedback, I thought. But yeah, I think you've got to ask people up and down the you know, all levels. I think anyone that's involved, because you get different perspectives from everyone.
Yep, definitely agree. All right, and then how about as you're looking and you're kind of picking, do you kind of go through and pick and choose which customers you send? If you're sending them out to different review sites, do you send them all everywhere? Like, how do you kind of like look at that as you're kind of planning out your process?
I think this goes back to the conversation we were having about the kind of having that timed approach according to what we need to fulfill. So if you care about the MQs, then you're probably timing for Gartner right around the MQs and then possibly pushing everything else or all other times to another vendor. So I think there's a need for a timed plan by product, by vendor, and kind of what you're doing. You know, one thing that we've thought about doing is if we can nail some of these always on campaigns, maybe some of those stay constantly for one vendor and we use a couple of others that are more higher touch to fulfill the MQ funnel. So.
Yeah, and there's a follow-up question here for like, do you ask the same customer or contact to do multiple sites? Would love to get y'all's thoughts there. I'm always a proponent of, I mean, once you've got someone who can write a review, they're normally happy to go do it a couple of times. So sometimes it's just, you know, staggering it out. Maybe you wait 3 months or whatever. But what's y'all's thoughts on that? Do you try to just segregate the audiences, or do you kind of blend them and kind of bounce around?
Yeah, I don't see an issue with that. You know, I think review sites do ask, you know, some review sites ask different questions than the others. And, you know, if it's a good customer, yeah, you might as well send them to different sites to ask for feedback. Yeah, I think no harm in that at all.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so we just had our customer conference actually this week, and part of the promotion that I did around the three review sites that we focus on is, hey, get a jump on your Christmas shopping, right? Like if you write 3 reviews, that's potentially $75 in Amazon gift cards that you can get started with your your holiday shopping. So no, don't discriminate across the sites. All the things we talked about. Putting the ask in different places, and what's the damage in having the same customer write 3 different reviews across 3 different sites? In my opinion, there's no downside to that.
Yep. No, totally agree. Okay, we're going to do a speed round. We're going to do a minute each on what does the future of reviews programs look like. So this should be interesting. You want to start first, Andrew?
Sorry. Sure. Yeah. I mean, the future of review programs, I think what you're going to see is probably a more embedded approach, right, to feeding these reviews to the appropriate teams across the business, support, customer success, obviously the advocacy program, and making those insights that are gleaned from reviews actionable, right? These aren't just these aren't going to be things that are posted on a website that you hope prospects come and read, right? With tools like TrustRadius and an additional module that TrustRadius offers, the Trust Quotes marketing platform, TQMP as we like to call it, that really allows you to take these reviews and do so much more with them, right? Put the actions in front of the appropriate teams across the business. So yeah, I think, a static website where these reviews live, that's going to go away. And you're going to see these embedded into your CRM system, whether it's a game site or whatever, account support applications as well. So I look for more integrations across, reviews and different, applications that you're using.
That's awesome. Lauren, how about you?
I completely agree with all of that. That was not what I was going to say, but he just said it and I love it. So I totally think that the days of our fighting kind of an uphill battle to get things integrated and pushed in, I don't think that'll have to be. But the biggest thing that I like to focus on when I think about kind of the evolution of this is with, and Andrew just said it for 1 second, was the customer success piece, as well as cross-sell, upsell opportunity, I think that's looming. So I feel like the reviews is one more point of data. And from that, we can glean how our customers are doing, what they're thinking about, in addition to their other engagement activities with us, whether that's communities or advocacy, whatever it is. And I think that we can start to build upon that to really offer value. So not so much, it's almost like use the data that we're getting from the reviews and their activities so that we know where they are in their own processes and what they're interested in, along with the other engagement activities that we have. And let's connect that, align to our customer success org so that we're able to really help them realize the value they sought out to do. And then once you have those happy customers, I think that in addition to the intent data programs that Omer has talked about and that are available, I think that you can start to take that data from those engagement programs and feed that in as a new input to be able to cross-sell, upsell, more or less.
Yep. Awesome. Omer, how about you?
Yeah. And I think all of what both Andrew and Lauren said is exactly right. And I think on one of the slides you showed, Jennifer, you had reviews as the third most important source of information or something like that. I think it's number one, or it will be number one very soon, especially with no trade shows happening in the near future, especially with everything digital. You can't avoid that source of information, and I think they're right up there with analyst reports. I think we'll see more prominence, more stakeholders involved, in review sites. Customer-facing teams are an integral part of it already, but I think sales is getting more involved in generating pipeline, and I think more syndication across your website, and more usage and leverage of review content. So yeah, I think we've mentioned this several times throughout the hour that there's just so much you can do with reviews, and that the possibilities are endless, really. So, I think there's just a lot more leveraging of the content that's on review sites.
Yep. Well, that's awesome. Well, that's our glimpse of the future. So let's see how we'll meet up in a year or two and see how it played out. Awesome. So we're just almost at time. We did pull a few of these key takeaways on here. We talked about focusing and scaling and measuring, right? There's a ton of value. You just have to have a plan and a way to kind of scale it and make sure you're measuring all along the way. We talked several times about kind of asking often, right? They're all in different places. Figure out a plan. It is not we sent out one email campaign. You need to kind of go and do more of that. And of course, don't be afraid of the negative reviews. Like, they are gifts, and use them as such. And everyone is afraid of negative reviews. Even when we first launched ours, I was like, what if they hate us? And it's nerve wracking. And then you find out people love you, right? We have seen that J curve. The vast majority of reviews are very positive, but don't be afraid of those negative ones. And don't wait to get buy-in, right? It fits your organization. Go out there and be a hero and push for it. So with that, we are right at time. We do have, if you would like, we can send out after this a link to go and get a Trust Radius demo. Of course, we've got folks who would be happy to talk to you about how a reviews program would fit in and what that would look like, and ways to go that you can go from very small to very large. So stay tuned for more of that. In fact, oh, there it is. My slide didn't advance, but yes, so that's our link down there. Go to it, check it out, and we would be more than happy to talk to you. And to my panelists today, thank you so much for joining me. Always a crapshoot when you're doing Zoom and technology, but we made it work. And to all of the guests today, you guys had great questions. So thank you for keeping the conversation going. It's kind of fun to go off script when you get real live questions in. So with that, we will conclude, and everyone have a great rest of your day.